All right, so welcome to the deep dives. Today, we're going deep into Mork Borg,
Ooh, Mork Borg.
this tabletop RPG that's been like really making waves.
Yeah.
You know, it's that game with the dark and gritty and super doom-laden style.
Yeah.
So we've got articles, we've got reviews, we've got a whole bunch of stuff here about it.
Awesome.
And we're going to kind of distill it all down for you. So if you're looking for a tabletop RPG, something that's like off the beaten path, you know, less about slaying dragons and more about like surviving in a world that's about to end,
Right.
then stick around. You might just find your new gaming obsession.
That's right. One of the first things that jumps out with Mork Borg is it just throws out the traditional rule book, like completely.
Okay.
Literally and figuratively.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that like immediately grabs you is the art style.
Yeah.
And it's heavily inspired by heavy metal album covers.
I could see that.
So, you know, imagine these like stark black and white illustrations and you got grotesque creatures and just this overall sense of impending doom. Yeah.
And it's visually stunning. It really sets the tone for the game.
It's not just about looking cool, though. Like, this doom metal aesthetic, does that, like, feed into the game?
Absolutely.
Mechanics, the feel.
Absolutely. Mork Borg is what's known as a rules-light system.
Okay.
Which means there's less emphasis on, like, really complex rules.
Yeah.
And there's more emphasis on the storytelling.
Okay.
And the player creativity.
I like that.
So think of it like, instead of having a rule for every single possible situation,
Right, yeah.
Mork Borg gives you like a framework, like a set of guidelines, and it encourages you to make decisions based on your character's personality and the circumstances of the story.
I see. That's pretty different from like most RPGs that I've played. You've got, you know, pages and pages of rules for everything, from combat to crafting.
Exactly.
So in Mork Borg, if my character wants to, let's say, climb a crumbling tower while being chased by a horde of goblins.
Okay.
Is there a rule for that? You, as a player, would describe what your character's trying to do.
Okay.
And then the game master, or GM, would determine how difficult that would be.
Right.
And what the consequences would be, using the game's core mechanics.
Okay.
And it relies on a very simple D20 system, a 20-sided die.
Yeah.
Which most RPG fans are familiar with.
Yeah, for sure.
But the beauty of Mork Borg is that it streamlines that process.
Right.
And it really keeps the focus on the narrative and the choices that you make kind of in the moment.
So I'm starting to see how the rules light approach kind of connects back to that doom metal vibe. It's like, instead of getting bogged down in all these rules, the game wants you to just embrace the chaos.
Exactly.
Make bold choices and see what happens.
Exactly. And that sense of impending doom, that's actually baked into the mechanics.
Uh-huh.
So Mork Borg has like a literal countdown to the apocalypse.
Oh, wow.
Which means every action, every encounter takes on this really heightened sense of urgency. You know, you're not trying to build a powerful character or amass a fortune. You're literally just trying to survive.
Right.
As the world crumbles around you.
It's definitely not your typical fantasy adventure.
Right.
So where exactly is all this doom and gloom taking place?
So the game is set in this dying world called Bastion.
Okay.
And from the descriptions I was reading, it sounds like a totally nightmarish place.
Okay.
So imagine like crumbling castles, overrun with grotesque creatures.
Ooh, nice.
You got twisted forests where the trees themselves seem to whisper secrets of decay.
Wow.
And a sky that's perpetually shrouded in darkness.
Yeah, it's a vibe.
It's bleak, it's oppressive.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely dripping with atmosphere.
Definitely not a place to book your next vacation.
Right.
And what about the people, or I guess the creatures who inhabit this wind?
Well,
what kind of characters can you play in Mork Borg?
Well, you know, forget your noble knights and your valiant heroes. Mork Borg characters are a little rough around the edges.
Yeah, yeah.
So instead of traditional character classes, you choose from a list of what the game calls archetypes.
Okay.
Like things like the Gutterborn Scum, the Fang Deserter, the Apocalypse Cult Priest.
I love it.
And these archetypes, they give you a starting set of skills, some basic equipment, and often a tragic or just downright bizarre backstory.
Okay, I am hooked already. I'm picturing my character like a fanged deserter, missing an eye, clutching this rusty sword, just trying to make sense of this chaotic world.
I love it.
So tell me more about how these characters actually like function in the game.
Sure.
What's it like to actually play Mork Borg?
Well, as we mentioned, combat is fast and brutal, just like the world itself. The D20 system comes into play here, but with a twist.
Yes.
So you're not rolling to hit and then rolling for damage.
Gotcha.
You roll once to see if you succeed at your attack.
Hmm.
And the result of that roll determines how much damage you inflict or receive.
Gotcha.
So it makes for a very unpredictable combat experience.
So it's less about strategic maneuvering and more about just rolling with the punches, literally.
Kinda, yeah.
And I'm guessing, with all this talk of doom and gloom, death is a pretty common occurrence in Mork Borg.
Let's just say,
Yeah.
character death is not something to be feared in Mork Borg.
Okay.
It's almost expected.
Gotcha.
You know, the game embraces the fragility of life.
Right.
And the threat of death adds this layer of tension to every decision that you make.
Yeah.
But it's not about punishing the players. It's about creating these really memorable moments.
Right.
And driving the story forward.
I see.
In these kind of unexpected ways.
But even if your character dies,
yeah.
the story continues.
Yeah. So one of the things that makes Mork Borg so unique is that it doesn't shy away from character death.
Okay.
In fact, it kind of encourages you to embrace it.
As part of the narrative. So you might have multiple characters ready to go.
Right.
Or the GM might weave your character's death into the story.
Yeah.
In a way that creates new opportunities for, drama and intrigue.
So it's not necessarily game over if your character meets an untimely demise.
Not at all.
Okay.
In Mork Borg, death is just another twist in the road.
Right.
Another opportunity for the story to evolve.
I like it.
And for the players to kind of explore the depths of this strange and unforgiving world.
This is really painting a vivid picture of what it's like to experience Mork Borg.
Right.
We've got this incredibly bleak setting.
Yeah.
We've got this streamlined rules light system that really encourages player creativity, this constant sense of danger and unpredictability.
Yep.
But what about the world itself?
Sure.
You mentioned Bastion, this dying world.
Yeah.
What else can you tell us about it?
Well, Bastion is more than just a backdrop. It's a character in its own right.
So, imagine a landscape ravaged by decay and despair, crumbling castles, overlooking desolate wastelands, and twisted forests concealing unimaginable horrors.
Hold on. Before we get too deep into the horrors of Bastion,
okay,
I think we need to take a step back here.
Okay, yeah.
Unpack some of these concepts for our listeners who might be new to tabletop RPGs.
You're right. We don't want to overwhelm anybody.
Right, exactly.
With jargon.
Yeah, so let's rewind a bit. We'll talk about what makes Mork Borg so different from your typical fantasy RPG.
Okay.
We've touched on the rules light system.
Yeah.
But what does that actually mean for someone who's used to games with a rule for everything?
Well, think of it like this. In a traditional RPG, you might have a rule book that tells you exactly how far you can jump.
Yeah.
Or how much damage a specific weapon does. Or how to craft a potion.
Okay, yeah.
In Mork Borg, those things are left more open to interpretation. Cool. The rules are there to kind of provide a framework.
Yeah.
But the GM and the players have a lot of freedom to improvise. And make rulings based on the situation.
So it's less about following a strict set of rules.
Right.
And more about collaboratively creating a story.
Precisely.
Right.
And that really ties back into that doom metal aesthetic that we talked about.
Yeah.
It's all about embracing the chaos, the uncertainty, the fact that, in a dying world, anything can happen.
For sure.
So.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, for our listeners who might be new to tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
Can you explain what a GM is?
Sure. So the GM or game master is the person who runs the game.
Yeah.
They're kind of like the director of a movie.
Yeah.
They set the scene, describe the world, control the non-player characters, and adjudicate the rules.
Okay.
And in Mork Borg, the GM has a lot of creative freedom to shape the story and create challenges for the players.
So it sounds like the GM is pretty important in Mork Borg.
They are.
What kind of person would make a good GM for this game?
Well, someone who enjoys improvisation,
Okay.
who's comfortable with ambiguity,
Right.
and who's not afraid to embrace the dark and the weird.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
They should also be able to balance the grim aspects of the game with moments of humor and levity.
Okay.
After all, even in a dying world, people still find ways to laugh and
Right.
connect with each other.
That's a good point. It's not all doom and gloom, right?
Right.
There's still room for humor and camaraderie
Yeah,
in Mork Borg.
for sure.
Speaking of camaraderie,
Yeah.
let's talk more about the characters you can play in this game.
Sure.
We've got these archetypes, like the Gutterborn Scum
Yeah.
and the Fanged Deserter,
Right.
which sounds super intriguing.
Yeah, they're great.
But can you give us some specific examples of how these characters might play out in the game?
Sure, let's take the Gutterborn Scum as an example. So imagine you're playing a character who grew up in the slums of a decaying city.
Uh-huh.
You've seen the worst of humanity, and you've learned to survive
Right.
by your wits and a healthy dose of cynicism.
I like it.
So maybe you're skilled at picking locks,
Okay.
or swindling unsuspecting merchants,
Uh-huh.
or navigating the city's underbelly.
Right.
In Mork Borg, you would translate those skills into game mechanics.
Okay.
Perhaps you get a bonus to certain dice rolls when you're trying to deceive someone.
Okay.
Or maybe you have a knack for finding hidden loot.
So the Gutterborn Scum isn't just a name, it's like a whole set of abilities
Exactly.
and personality traits that influence how you play the game.
Precisely.
Okay.
And each archetype has its own unique flavor.
Yeah.
So the Fanged Deserter, for example, might be a former soldier who's haunted by the horrors of war.
Right.
And has a particular set of skills related to combat and survival.
Okay.
The apocolapse cult priest. Yeah.
Might have access to strange rituals or forbidden knowledge.
Right.
That can be both helpful and dangerous.
Interesting. Okay.
No.
It seems like the character creation process in Mork Borg is less about picking a class and more about crafting a unique individual with a backstory, a personality, motivations.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the game encourages you to really lean into that role-playing aspect.
Yeah.
You know, you're not just playing a set of stats.
Right.
You're embodying a character with flaws and hopes and dreams, even in a world that's falling apart around them.
And speaking of a world falling apart, let's dive back into Bastion.
Okay.
You were about to describe this desolate wasteland when we took our little detour into RPG basics.
Right, right.
What else can you tell us about the world of Mork Borg?
Well, as I was saying, Bastion is a place of decay and despair.
Mm-hmm.
The landscape is scarred by ancient wars, strange plagues, and the encroaching darkness. Okay.
The sun is a distant memory, and the sky is often choked with ash and smoke.
Yeah, a vibe.
But it's not just a barren wasteland.
Sure.
There are remnants of civilization clinging to existence.
Okay.
So crumbling cities, isolated villages, forgotten temples.
And I'm guessing those remnants of civilization aren't exactly havens of peace and tranquility.
Not quite.
Yeah.
Bastion is teeming with danger.
Right.
You got grotesque creatures lurking in the shadows, mutated beasts roaming the wilds, and perhaps most dangerous of all, you got power-hungry individuals who are willing to exploit the chaos for their own gain.
So it sounds like the players will have their hands full.
They will.
Just trying to survive in this world.
Yeah.
But what about the actual gameplay? We've talked about combat being fast and brutal.
Yeah.
But what else can players expect to encounter in Mork Borg?
Well, Mork Borg doesn't follow a traditional quest structure. There's no overarching storyline that the players are expected to follow.
Gotcha.
Instead, the game is designed to be very open-ended.
Okay.
So the GM might present the players with a series of challenges, rumors of lost treasures, or opportunities to exploit the chaos for their own gain.
So it's really up to the players to decide what they want to do, how they want to interact with the world.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's where the rules light system really shines.
Yeah.
It gives players the freedom to be creative, to take risks,
Yeah.
and to tell their own stories within the framework of this dying world.
And speaking of creativity, one of the things that really caught my eye in these articles is how Mork Borg handles resource management.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about collecting gold and buying new equipment, is it?
No, not at all.
Oh,
in Mork Borg, resources are scarce.
Right.
And everything has a cost. Weapons break, armor deteriorates, and even food and water can be hard to come by.
Right.
So this forces players to make these really tough choices and to think creatively about how they're going to survive.
So it's not enough to just be a skilled fighter or a cunning rogue.
Right.
You also need to be resourceful and pragmatic.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that adds another layer of tension to the game. Every decision, every action has consequences.
Yeah.
And you're constantly weighing the risks and rewards of your choices.
Yeah.
Do you spend your last few coins on a healing potion?
Right.
Or do you save them for a bribe that might get you past a particularly nasty guard?
It's like every choice is a gamble.
It is.
And you're never quite sure how it's going to play out.
Right.
It's got to be pretty thrilling, but also a little terrifying.
It is, and that's part of the appeal of Mork Borg.
Yeah.
You know, it's a game that keeps you on the edge of your seat, constantly wondering what's going to happen next. But it's also a game that rewards creativity and improvisation.
Yeah.
You know, if you're clever and resourceful, you can find ways to overcome even the most challenging obstacles.
It sounds like Mork Borg really captures that sense of being on the brink, of fighting for survival against all odds. What about the psychological aspect of playing a game like this?
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, why are we drawn to these dark apocalyptic settings?
Right.
What is it about exploring a world on the verge of collapse that resonates with us?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that's been debated for centuries.
Right.
I think there's something primal about the apocalypse,
Ah.
something that taps into our deepest fears and anxieties.
Right.
But there's also something strangely compelling about it.
Yeah.
Something that allows us to confront those fears
Yeah.
in a safe and controlled environment.
It's like watching a horror movie. Right.
Exactly.
You know, it's not real,
Right.
but you still get that adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
That sense of excitement and fear.
Exactly. And in a game like Mork Borg,
Yeah.
where you're actively shaping the story and making choices that impact the outcome.
Right.
That sense of immersion is even stronger.
Yeah.
It's not just about watching the world end.
Right.
It's about experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah.
About making decisions that could mean the difference between life and death.
It's like a thought experiment.
Yes.
But with dice and character sheets.
Precisely. And I think that's part of the appeal of Mork Borg.
Yeah.
It allows us to explore these dark and unsettling themes in a way that's both entertaining and thought-provoking.
Yeah.
It forces us to ask ourselves these tough questions about what we value, how we would react in extreme situations, and what it means to be human in a world that's lost all sense of normalcy.
It's a heavy topic for sure.
It is.
But it's one that Mork Borg seems to handle with a surprising amount of grace and, dare I say, humor.
Yeah.
I've noticed that even in the darkest of descriptions, there's a kind of tongue-in-cheek quality.
There is.
Yes.
You're right.
Yeah.
The creators of Mork Borg don't take themselves too seriously.
Right.
And that sense of irony and dark humor,
Yeah.
it permeates the entire game.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in the face of oblivion,
Right.
there's still room for laughter,
Yeah.
absurdity, and a little bit of rebellion.
It's like they're saying, yeah, the world's ending, but let's not forget to have a little fun along the way.
And that sense of defiance,
Yeah.
of finding joy and meaning in the midst of chaos.
Right.
It's something that I think resonates deeply with players.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times,
Yeah,
the human spirit can still shine through.
absolutely.
We've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
from the mechanics and setting of Mork Borg to the deeper philosophical implications of its apocalyptic themes.
Right.
But I think we need to take a quick breather here. Okay. And let all this information sink in.
Agreed. We've thrown a lot at you,
Yeah, we have.
but there's still so much more to explore.
When we come back, we'll delve deeper into the specific challenges and adventures that await players in the world of Mork Borg.
Yes.
We'll talk about the creatures you might encounter, the mysteries you might uncover, and the choices you'll be forced to make in this desolate and unforgiving world.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been spelunking in the depths of Mork Borg, you know, this tabletop RPG that's got gamers really captivated, you know, with its bleak world, its brutal mechanics, and its haunting and beautiful art style. But as you know, no deep dive is complete without getting into the nitty-gritty,
Right.
the stuff that makes this game really unique.
Exactly. And in the case of Mork Borg, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, there is.
We've talked about that rules light system and the freedom it gives players, but I think it's time we shed some light on how those rules actually play out.
Yeah. Perfect, because I'm dying to know what kind of crazy adventures await players in this doomed world of Bastion.
Right.
The articles mention these tables in the rule book.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us more about those?
Ah, yes. The tables are one of the things that make Mork Borg so wonderfully unpredictable and weird.
Okay.
They're basically random generators that the GM can use
All right.
to create encounters, challenges, even entire storylines on the fly.
Okay, so give me an example.
Sure.
How would this work in practice?
So let's say your group of doomed heroes
Yeah.
is trudging through a desolate wasteland,
Okay.
and they stumble upon a crumbling watchtower.
Okay.
The GM could roll on a table titled Ruins Encounters
Right.
to determine what awaits them inside.
Gotcha.
Maybe they find a crazed hermit
Okay.
hoarding a stash of ancient scrolls,
Mm.
or perhaps they uncover a hidden chamber filled with glowing mushrooms that whisper secrets of the apocalypse.
Whoa. So it's like rolling a die
Yeah.
to determine your fate, but
Yeah.
instead of just a number,
Right.
you get a whole mini scenario.
Exactly. And these tables cover everything from the mundane to the utterly bizarre.
Wow.
There are tables for generating random rumors,
Okay.
weather events,
Right.
character quirks, even the contents of a dead adventurer's pockets.
That's so cool. It seems like these tables would give the GM a lot of tools to create a truly dynamic and unpredictable game experience.
They do, and they encourage players to think on their feet and adapt to unexpected situations, which is essential in a world like Bastion,
Right.
where nothing is certain and a danger lurks around every corner.
So we've got these random generators that really spice things up.
They do.
But what about specific challenges
Yeah.
or monsters that players are likely to encounter?
Oh, yeah.
What kind of horrors await them in this world?
Oh, there is no shortage of nightmare fuel in Mork Borg. The creatures that inhabit Bastion are a grotesque reflection of the world's decay.
Okay.
You got flesh-warped monstrosities, mutated beasts with too many eyes,
Right, yeah.
and creatures that seem to defy the laws of nature.
Yeah, that tracks. Can you give us an example of a particularly memorable monster?
Sure, one that sticks out is the scuttling doom.
Okay.
So imagine a creature made entirely of bone and sinew,
Okay.
with countless spindly legs that carry it across the landscape like a nightmarish spider.
Okay.
It's driven by an insatiable hunger,
Right.
and it leaves a trail of misery and madness in its wake.
That's enough to give anyone nightmares.
Yeah.
But it's not just about fighting monsters, is it?
Right.
What other challenges might players face in Mork Borg?
Well, the world itself is a challenge.
Okay.
Resources are scarce.
Right.
The landscape is treacherous, and the very air seems to whisper secrets of despair.
Wow.
But beyond the physical dangers, there are moral dilemmas,
Okay.
social conflicts,
Right.
psychological challenges
Yeah.
that players will have to navigate.
So it's not just about surviving physically.
Right.
It's also about surviving mentally and emotionally.
Exactly. Mork Borg explores the human condition in these extreme circumstances.
Right.
It asks questions about what we value,
Uh-huh.
how we cope with loss and despair,
Right.
and what it means to find hope
Yeah.
in a world that seems to have abandoned it.
It sounds like Mork Borg is more than just a game.
It is.
It's almost like a philosophical exploration of the apocalypse.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a game that encourages introspection,
Yeah.
that forces you to confront uncomfortable truths,
Right.
and that ultimately leaves you with more questions than answers.
It's like a mirror reflecting back our own anxieties and fears,
Yeah,
but also our resilience and our capacity for hope.
precisely.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Mork Borg so compelling. It's a game that stays with you long after you've put down the dice.
Yeah.
A game that makes you think about the world around you
Mhm.
and your place in it.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job here
I think so.
of uncovering the depths of Mork Borg.
I agree.
We've talked about the mechanics, the setting, the creatures,
Yeah.
the challenges,
Yeah.
and even the philosophical implications of this truly unique game.
It's one of a kind.
But before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The idea that Mork Borg is more than just a game. Can you expand on that a bit?
Of course. So Mork Borg transcends the boundaries of traditional tabletop RPGs.
Okay.
It's a work of art.
Yeah.
It's a social commentary
Come on.
and a catalyst for introspection,
Right.
all rolled into one.
Right.
You know, the art style alone is
Yeah.
a masterpiece.
Yeah.
You know, capturing the bleakness and the beauty of a dying world.
And the writing with its dark humor and stark prose,
Yeah.
it evokes this sense of dread and wonder
Yeah.
that's hard to find anywhere else.
It's like they've created a whole universe, not just a game.
Exactly. And within that universe,
Yeah.
players are free to tell their own stories, to explore their own fears and desires, and to discover what it truly means to be human
Yeah.
in the face of oblivion.
So for those of you out there who are intrigued by what you've heard today,
Yeah.
I encourage you to take the plunge into
Yeah.
the world of Mork Borg.
Good.
It's a journey that will challenge you,
Yeah.
surprise you, and
Absolutely.
perhaps even change the way you think about the world around you.
Absolutely.
Beautifully said. So until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and maybe, just maybe, stay doomed.